From the studios of Foxboro Cable Access, located in the center of Foxboro, Massachusetts, you are watching Around Foxboro.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Around Foxboro, where we talk about the people, places, and things that make Foxboro the gem of Norfolk County. My name is Mark Rivard, and I am pleased to have as my guest today, Saide Harb-Ranero. Welcome,
Hello.
Saide.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I'm super excited. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
When I was looking over some of your information, your background, I always say, people come to Foxboro in strange ways. I came from a strange town called Bellingham, which is about 15 minutes away. You came a different route. You want to tell everybody about that? It's a very fascinating story.
I was born and raised in Lebanon. It's a little country in the Middle East, little but big at heart. It's beautiful there, but unfortunately, I was born in the middle of a long 15-year civil war. We didn't really feel it in our perfect little town. We were pretty sheltered, but in 1989, the war broke out in my region, and I was only 9 years old, and we all had to go underground in a shelter. We stayed there for a pretty long while until they ceased fire and everything stopped, and we came back out. And I grew up in the aftermath of it. We had to deal with it as a teenager. It wasn't easy. All my generation had a lot of anger, a lot of violence growing out of that, a lot of resentment, hope of a future that we knew it will never gonna come. Promises were made and nothing happened. So my generation really had it really hard. I'm gonna say about 90% of my friends ended up dead.
Wow.
Either accidents, drugs, suicide, fights. It wasn't easy, and I suffered a lot from mental health issues growing up there. Struggled a lot to find my way, and I wasn't happy. So when I was 20 years old, my sister and my brother-in-law, who lived in Canada for a really long time, told my father, why don't you let us have her?
Wow.
Because she has two ways. Either she ends up, in jail, or she ends up dead. So let her give her a future. So I left, and I went to Canada. I stayed there for a year. I went to college, and I loved it. It was such a different world, But then I met someone here when I came on vacation for like 3 days. It was Valentine's in 2003.
Valentine's Day.
I met a guy, and I was like, oh, that's him.
That's the guy.
Yeah, that's the guy. I went back to Canada, but I didn't stay there for too long.
I can imagine. Once you found that guy.
No, I didn't. Didn't even, like, a few months, and I came back that summer, and we ended up getting married, and I've been here since 2003.
Wow.
It's not to give out my age, but I've been here for about 17 years.
Wow.
Yes, and we were so young. He was only 20 and I was 21. He ended up going into the police academy, and he was one of the youngest cops in Boston.
Wow.
So we lived there for, the contract 10 years, and then we moved around a lot to find, because we're both immigrants. So when you're not rooted somewhere, it's really hard to be home.
It's hard to put down stakes until you find that right place.
It's really hard to call somewhere home, especially when this is not really home. You grew up somewhere. Him and he's from Guatemala, so we started doing research on the perfect town, because now we have two beautiful girls, and we want them to have a home. They can't grow up like us.
Right.
They want to feel like if they lived a year in Kenya, they come back home to somewhere, to a community. So we did our research for about a year and a half, and Foxboro was the perfect community.
Did you hear that? Foxboro is the perfect community.
You
really heard it here, folks. I didn't say it.
We did our research. We snuck into your community pages, and because you don't want to look at statistics made by people who only live here, or the schools, and we wanted to see the fabric of the community, and we were fascinated. We moved. We rented at first for a year to find a home, and then we did. And honestly, I'm still being surprised by the people here. They're so humble and beautiful and welcomed us. even before school started, I was getting emails and phone calls, invited to birthday parties for the girls. I was like, wow, people are still doing that? Like, you know,
Yeah.
it was fascinating.
It's a
They cared.
small town mentality, which is great to bring up a family.
It is. So my daughter started school, already knew the 2 classrooms because they gathered each other in at the borough in huge playground meets with all these moms and the kids. So it's like people like this town was stuck in history. Like, did they not change? You know, like the old days.
The town,
with
the
someone
time
bringing
forgot.
like a bundt cake, hello to the neighborhood, you know? And I was like, whoa, people actually talk to people here. I lived 10 years in Boston. I don't know my neighbor's
Boston,
name.
Boston.
Yeah, so we moved, and we've been here for 2 years and some now.
Well, welcome to Foxboro.
Thank
That's an awesome story. And I mean, it's a lot better situation than you grew up in, and we always try to make sure our kids have a better life than we did.
Absolutely, absolutely. And especially right now, back home in Lebanon, it's actually a revolution to overthrow the government. It's been a month now. People are on the street. About more than 2 million people are camping on the street. You see little kids rolling up the flag as a pillow, the sheet, the flag, and wrapping themselves in flags. And it is such a proud moment for me. You know, I've been wanting this for a really long time, especially us teenagers. We tried to make changes. We tried so hard. We revolted. We rebelled. We demanded things, and people were so tired to even listen to us. Like, kid, we just went over 15 years of war. Can you just go to school and fix what we messed up? That was kind of the thing, you know? You're supposed to be our engineers, doctors, and lawyers to fix this country, but what kind of kid is gonna grow up in that's gonna become a productive citizen to fix a mistake that the older generation made?
Yeah.
So, but I'm seeing it now. It's beautiful to watch. Painful, because, you know, some had to give up their life and died because of it, because of, you know, whatever's happening. But it's a proud moment.
It's great.
Yeah.
And you actually wrote a lot about your experiences there. Tell us a little bit about the diary and the language barrier that you had, because I thought that was really fascinating.
I did. So I've always been a writer. Like, even when I was in first grade, the teacher called my mom and she said, I asked for a paragraph, and I remember it was a descriptive paragraph for the fall, and I ended up writing like 2-3 pages. And my teacher, I can never forget her, she said, your daughter is a writer. And my mom's like, a writer, you know? And it's like, how is that gonna make her any money? She's a writer. She needs to be a doctor, an engineer, a lawyer, you know, like a title. And I started writing, but I didn't want to write in Arabic because my parents can't read, or French, which is our second language, because I can read that too. So, and I've always had this love for English, you know? It was such a descriptive language for me that I can write stuff in this foreign language, you know, and watching Hollywood. And I remember, like, after we got out of the war, and, you know, the shelter, there was no electricity. My dad had this little tiny black and white TV, and he would hook it to the battery of his car, and the entire neighborhood would gather. And then TV channels started putting like movies and subtitled in Arabic, and I would just like, oh, they sound so pretty, you know? That language was fascinating to me, and I was determined to learn it. And, you know, like in high school they give you like a foreign language course, but who takes those seriously? Our teacher used
not
to,
enough, apparently.
Yeah, our teacher used to put like songs for Britney Spears and Backstreet Boys at the end, you know, at that time. We were like, who's learning language? Like, we didn't learn anything, right? But I was obsessed with Alanis Morissette, right?
Oh.
So what ended up happening is I had this little radio with our cassettes back in the day, you know. There was no iPads and... You know.
I remember cassettes.
My kids don't even know what that means. So we used to record I used to record Alanis Morissette songs from the radio, right? And pause and rewind and try to write the words. And then I would translate the words into French so I understand what she's actually singing about. And I had like my little dictionary and I started learning English. And at first when I wanted to write about what I was going through, I would write in French, translate, and then throw the French and keep the English.
Wow.
And it's funny because I still have those books.
You do? Really?
Yes, all of my diaries.
Wow.
And the spelling was hilarious.
Oh, wow.
Because it's all phonetic. Like
It's all
I
phonetic.
learned the language by listening.
English is a very tough language. It's one of the hardest languages to learn because there's so many different rules and phonetics don't always work. So
yeah.
I can imagine what you went through
Yeah.
trying to figure out, okay, how do I spell this word? You know?
Yes, because
sounds like
I
this.
wasn't taking any grammar or anything.
Right.
I heard it. So I started writing. And when I left Lebanon to go to Canada and then here, I had to wait for my paperwork and my green card to go to college again. And so I did, and I went to Bridgewater State University, and I wanted to become a writer, so I took English literature. But I had taken like a few courses in Massasoit and Brockton, and when I did the test, I passed every English test, even though I've never taken a course of English in my life or a grammar lesson.
That's incredible.
So
that is incredible.
I was blessed because
you were driven to learn.
My professors didn't penalize me for my grammar mistakes because I was a really good analytical writer. So they overlooked my horrible grammar. Even when I started writing and I started my novel, I would tell my mentor, it's full of red pen, it's so many mistakes. And she would tell me, if you really want to be a writer, there's an editor for that. Can you just write and don't worry about the grammar? But, we are our worst critics. You know, even when I'm writing my emails now as an adult, and I'm like, can someone check it for me? I sound really bad.
In the days of now, you have spell check and grammar check.
They do, but they don't check everything.
Well, they don't check everything. That's true. That's true. But they do a pretty good job.
Yeah. Well, it's been working. So I did that, and I graduated from Bridgewater University with an English degree and a writing concentration. And I've been writing. I took a break for a while. I started teaching. But 2-3 years ago, I had to pick either I write or I teach. I couldn't do both with kids.
Right.
I'm spending all day with kids. And then I'm coming home to my
your
own kids and my housework and, being a wife and a mom and a woman. I'm like, I can't do this. I couldn't write. As long as I'm teaching, I couldn't write. So it's I had to give one up for the other. And writing is my passion, so I want to do. Even when I'm not writing, I'm writing in my head and it gets super messy. Because I have about 7 voices in my head. I was like, shh. You guys need to stop now. I have to act like an adult, and you're driving me crazy in my head. Wait your turn. I need to talk to this mom right now, okay? So I had to train my brain to, oh, I know you're writing up there, but shh, do it quietly.
Well, you've written a lot, apparently, from what I understand. You have a book that's out on Smashwords?
Yeah, it's a short story. It's on.
It's a short story.
Yes, I published it for free. I wanted to test the waters, and I've had a lot of downloads and good reviews. And I love this story, I love it a lot. So it's actually in my novel. I took it out and made it stand on its own as a short story.
So an Arabian Tale, Amar's Destiny, is the short story, and then the novel that you're hoping to publish is called Not a Victim.
Not a Victim, yes. This book means the world to me. Obviously, I'm not published yet. I've been rejected a few times, more than a few.
Stephen King was rejected. All great authors have been rejected multiple times. So
you said Stephen King, and my heart's like, ooh. I'm obsessed. I'm addicted to him. I just find myself driving to me. I always think I should just drive to Maine and just wait outside and pretend he hit me in his car or something. So this story started as me telling the story of my generation. And I wanted to fictionalize it because I wanted to give that one character the journey of so many that could not tell their story. Because when I first started writing in college, I had a professor, Dr. Trask, I never forget this man. I wrote one page, one little tiny page. It was like a free writing, I wrote it and he said, Saide, what is this? And I said, it's a story, And he's like, do you know anything about this? Like, I was like, yeah, I spent time in a shelter underground during the war. And this is kind of like a glimpse of what happened. He was like, you did what? You survived a war. And I said, yeah, a civil war back home. And he was like, this needs to be a book. And I said, no, it doesn't. He's like, yes, it does. And I was like, you figured that out from one page, double spaced? He's like, yes, people want to know. And I said, but people don't care. How am I going to publish a book in English and it's my third language and look at my mistakes? He was like, you need to tell this story. And I told him, but I don't want to name names. I don't want to point fingers at anyone, right, or tell someone's story that don't want to tell anything about, or, it's just very private stuff. And he said, well, you can fictionalize it. I was like, interesting. I can do that. He said, yeah, there's a huge difference between nonfiction and fiction. Remember, we learned that last week. And I said, yeah, I know, but I never thought that I can actually fictionalize the truth, So I did. And I applied to get an ATP. It's an Adrian Tinsley program at school in Bridgewater University, where you represent your research. They give you a grant, and you literally only write. Like, this is your job. You get paid to be a writer. And this is when I knew that this is what I really want to do in my life. Because I spent over 10 weeks writing, only research and writing. And my mentor said, if you survive this, then you're really meant to be a writer. And I was never happier. Even with all the stress and the sleepless nights and the research, I had to do research, and I kept doing it for the next 3 years for the book. Political research and social research, and it was a lot, but it had to be done to preserve a dignity of a history of a country. You can't just make up stories. I can make up characters, I can make up events, but I can't make up events and histories.
You can't fictionalize it that much. You have to really
You
tell
have to
the real
honor-
story, but the names have been changed to protect the
You have to
innocent.
honor the integrity of a country. So that's what I did. I started writing, and being a teenager, I saw so much stuff that happened to my friends, so much stories that I heard that were hushed. I call it, we're the skipped generation. They skipped us. They did not want to face the failure. It's like when a mother's child grows up to be a really not a good person, she doesn't want to face how she raised him, or must have done something wrong for him to become that person. So she kind of just skips that guilt. And I felt like my generation was that child that grew up in a war, saw things that kids should not see, and then now you're a teenager, well, get up and be a good citizen. Well, yeah, but excuse me, I saw that, I witnessed this. How do you want me to function? That's called trauma, right? But now you want me to become a productive citizen and fix your mistakes, and no one's asking us, hey, hon, how you doing? Nothing. They skipped us, and I've always hated that. I'm like, but there's so many people whose stories are buried under false promises, and no, I want to tell their story. So I did in that book. I took all these stories and all these events and made them into one character. And the things that I couldn't put in one character, I made secondary characters. And I told the story of a generation that no one bothered to ask, how are you? So I did that. And I've sent it to so many agents. And one of them in New York went really far with me. And he got to a chapter towards the end of the book. He got scared. He said, it's way too controversial for a Middle Eastern story, and you're mentioning this in it, and you're talking about that. I don't know what to do with it. I'm so sorry. It's interesting. I wish you the best, but I don't know where to take you from here. So that was a bummer. I was like, okay, why are you scared? There's so many stories out there. But it is what it is, you know? But times are changing.
Yes, they are.
And Lebanon is all over the news right now, you know? And a lot of people are making such a big name for themselves. You have Nadine Labake. She was actually nominated at the Oscars for her foreign film. Mm-hmm. She made it all the way to Oprah. She invited her to her home. You have Elie Saab, who is one of the best designers. You're on the red carpet everywhere. You know, you have Reem Akra. You have all these Lebanese people who are making a really good name for that little teeny tiny country that everybody wants a piece of it. So I feel like my time should come soon because it's not this forgotten part of the world. It's everywhere right now, and people need to hear these stories, you know? So
And they should hear these stories.
They should.
They should, because it's not just Lebanon.
It's everywhere.
There are people who have been through these types of things in other countries too.
Absolutely. Everywhere. Everywhere. And there's a story everywhere. It's just not everybody wants to sit and write it. I did, and I want to. So I'm going to give it another try and send it to more agents.
Keep sending it. Just keep sending it.
Something's got to give, right?
Yeah.
And my
if we have any publishers that are watching this, please contact Saide, okay? She's got a great story to tell.
I hope so. So we'll see. And my poetry is part of that world too. Because poetry to me was not something, it was very private. I never thought, oh, I'm a poet. You know, poetry was very healing for me. As I let go my anger there, I let go whatever. Nothing's fictionalized, nothing. It's my truth. So everything I write, I put it in one book. It starts with the war, the aftermath, and then the hope at the end of it. So it's kind of a storytelling, but in poetic form. No fiction there. It's just me and my heart. And I have my short stories, which are a completely different world. My short story collection is actually my nightmares. I've always had recurring nightmares, same nightmares all the time. And one day I figured, like, you know what? I'm gonna write you down and see what happens. I'm gonna tweak it and make it more interesting and add characters other than myself in that nightmare. I wanna see what comes out. And it turned out to be very dark, but I think it's pretty. I love them. And I'm obsessed with short stories. Love short stories. It's like you go into one world, you see it all in this really short period of time, and you get out.
And then you wonder, all right, what happens next?
Yeah.
And you get to imagine it as opposed to waiting for the author to say, okay, I'm going to write another one. No, you just get to, what do you think happened next?
I know. I love short stories because you have this entire world in just like maybe like 3-4 pages or more or less, but whatever it is, you know, no excessive details, no nothing. And the writer has to compress this entire story in something really small, and I think it's fascinating. Mainly also because I'm obsessed with Edgar Allan Poe, but I believe we had, past lives. He was my husband, I was his Virginia, but that's just for another time.
Never more.
Just me and him.
Well, one more thing we got to get out there is that you're also doing a children's book series?
Yes.
Want to tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. It's a cute story because it started with my niece. Her name is Anna. She lives in Canada, and she was so teeny, teeny, tiny, and she did not like people to read books to her. At that time, you tried to read. No, I don't like books. I was like, okay, so what do you want? And one day she told me, well, you like to write. Why don't you come up with a story for me? That would be special, and I would be the only one who can hear it. So I was okay. First name came to my mind, Layla. It's a very popular name, but every single culture, religion, every single country has a Layla. And Layla in Arabic means night.
Oh.
It does.
Did not know
so,
that.
Yeah, it means night, Leile. So I'm like, there's this little girl, her name is this, and I start telling her the story. And she was like, tell me more, tell me more. And I would tell her, tomorrow night, we'll go to a different country. So she loved it. And I was like, I have something here. You know, it's a cultural series. And every book in this series goes to a different country. And now I wrote it. You know, countries will come along. The world is big.
Right.
But I love diversity, and I don't like kids to live in a little bubble. I don't think it's healthy.
No.
The world is not rainbows and a soccer game on a Saturday, and you go home, you eat ice cream, and it's beautiful. No, I'm a great believer in allowing kids first to be humble and see what's happening outside and see different cultures and see different countries and see how kids around the world live. Not everybody has an iPad. Not everybody has even a meal, you know? Right. Some countries don't even have water. Kids have to drink from sewage on the floor. So I don't know, this is at least how I see how I raise my kids, and how I would hope everybody would open the world to their kids, you know?
They should. There's a lot of culture out there we can learn from everybody's cultures.
Exactly.
That's how America was founded, on all different cultures.
Absolutely. This is where my head was. I'm like, walk into one classroom and there's at least 10 countries in one classroom, you know? Kids from all over the world. So I came up with this series, and the little girl in my book goes to different countries in every book. And every country, she learns a few words here and there. She meets someone from that country who would take her around. She will see landmarks. She would learn the specialty food. Like, let's say if she goes to Lebanon, that little girl will eat tabbouleh. And she would learn little words, Arabic here and there, from that friend she meets there. And then at the end of it, she wakes up back home because everything happens in her dreams.
Wow.
So, and my friend in New York, his name is Patrick. He's brilliant, very eccentric artist. He's illustrating it for me right now.
That's great.
One country at a time.
Awesome.
I'm hoping that one of these days teachers will, you know, open it and introduce the kids to different cultures, different country. And I know Foxboro school system is doing that as we speak right now, the eye care program, and reading across the world. I don't know. I wish it was out right now. It would have been perfect for what the school's trying to do.
Well, there's always next year, right?
Yeah.
That's all done.
I'm hoping.
Well, you know, if you want, if I want to give out your information, your Instagram and everything, just you can say it right now, and
I would love
we'll get it out to everybody. We'll get it up on the screen.
I would love to, and people to connect. I would love someone to just say, hi, I saw you, and we get to talk and learn about people and learn about what's happening right now or what did happen. I don't know, at least I would be interested. I love to know everybody's stories and where they're from, and learn about their ancestors and where their parents are from, because we're all from somewhere.
Right.
I love that. So
Well,
I hope so. I
okay.
hope, well,
You're speaking to the audience now. Tell them your Instagram.
yes.
Where you can reach you.
My Instagram handle is Saide Harb-Ranero, and it's my name itself is spelled different than the normal Sadie.
Yeah.
It's Saide, not the other way around. I thought of changing it when I took my citizenship, because
stay
you
it.
can change. I was like, oh my God, I can have any name I want.
Alanis.
I should have been Alanis, but my father would have never forgiven me. When I first got married, I took my husband's last name. I was like, oh my gosh, Latin, it's so exotic. I'm just gonna be Ranero. And my father was like, I don't like that. You're had it first. You're my daughter first, and then his wife. And I was like, oh, the patriarchy. I hit a nerve. So when I took my citizenship, I brought back my father's last name, and I was like, you happy? He's like, yes. Which is kind of funny, you know, for a Middle Eastern man to be that kind of a feminist. Like, why are you giving up your last name, you know? I thought it was cute, so I brought it back.
That's funny.
So my Instagram, we got off course here, is Saide Harb-Ranero, one word, my handle. And my Facebook handle is My Inked Parchment. I know I came up with it before I even started using Facebook. And now that I have a community page on Facebook, I've been trying to change it, but they're not letting me.
They won't let you. No, it's Facebook.
Yeah. And they keep telling me it's irrelevant. I was like, it's my name.
Yeah.
How is it, like, how does it not follow your guideline? It's my actual name. Nope. They keep rejecting it, so it's okay. It's fine. People will find me.
We'll find you.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say thank you for joining us today. It was a fascinating story, and I'm hoping you get published because I really want to read this novel.
I'm hoping too. Been wanting this for as long as I can remember. I'll get there. I'll get there.
You will. Fingers crossed.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been amazing. And meeting you and everybody else who's going to watch this, hit me up on social media and say, hey, I'm your neighbor.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And that'll do it for today's edition of Around Foxborough. Thank you once again to Saide Harb-Ranero for joining us. I'm Mark Rivard. Have yourself a great day.